trust builds as we experience the relationship. And so tell me why you have trust in here and why it's so important to you.
Yeah. One of the things that when I, as a consultant, I'm sure you have this too. You walk into an organization, people say, "Oh, we just don't trust each other," and trust is such a big issue in organizations. And what I find is that trust in organizations, it often starts with people having poor assumptions about the other.
Yes.
That the others fulfill from their perspective,
Right.
and so therefore they continue to drive trust into the ground.
Right.
And so part of what I really try to do with organizations, and I try to model myself, is to be straight.
Yeah, that's Cathy.
Yeah. And again, no hidden agendas.
Right.
High amount of transparency.
Right.
But then to follow up and do what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
And that's really important. Now,
Yes.
I really think, when I work with organizations, the other thing is to start off with assuming the best.
Yes.
So when I ask people in organizations, sometimes, can you assume the best and not just assume the worst, which
Right.
continues to undermine trust.
Right.
And lots of communication and sidebar conversations that continue to undermine trust.
Right.
So it's, I also, when I work with somebody, I assume the best.
Yes.
I trust first.
Yes.
And then I wait to see if something doesn't work out,
Right.
and then I'll deal with it.
Right.
But that's really an important thing, I think, for good relationships, is to assume a level of trust to start with.
Right. And I like your notion in here about boundaries, getting the boundaries clear.
Yes.
So you know what to expect and not to expect,
Right.
and you can lay out expectations, and you can ask their expectations.
Right, exactly. I think boundaries are really important, and if anything that I find in organizations that cause a lack of trust or continue to undermine it, is I expect something and you don't give it to me, and so therefore I
Right.
trust you less.
Right.
And then we can get into some bad patterns that
Right.
way. Yeah.
So it's Jack Gibbs' Tory theory.
Mm.
Trust is the opposite of fear. And the way that you get to trust from fear is to take risks.
I agree that that trust is probably the opposite, of fear.
Yes.
However, I don't always think it comes as a result of being an autocratic leader. I have worked in a lot of organizations with unions.
Yes.
And unions and management have different expectations.
Right.
They have different missions, etc. And I see oftentimes a lack of trust. And it's not because folks at the top are mean,
Right.
but it's because they have different perspectives on what's important now. And they get into some necessarily nasty communications.
Right, and I think
that self-reinforce each other.
that's a good embellishment.
So,
I think that's absolutely true.
and so I think, and I've actually come to appreciate over the years how difficult the leadership job is.
Oh, yes.
And I've come to realize that as I sit there and I think about it, that every leader is human, and every leader is probably trying the best he or she can.
That's right.
And so what I also try to do beyond coaching the leaders is asking people to give the leaders a break.
Right.
Can you understand, and can we all get on the same page? I always go back to Don Klein and
Yes.
say, Don, he said, what you see is based on where you sit.
Right.
If we can all see the same thing together,
Right.
we're going to have a different sense of togetherness.
Yep.
So that's often where I'm driving in the organization.
Each person has their own truth.
Right.
That's their perception
Yeah.
of reality.
Yeah.
Okay.